Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Self-Checkout Podcast. I'm Tyler Kern, joined, as always, by Grocery Store Mike. We are out at the 85th Annual OGA Convention here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We're right outside the convention center today, Mike, and it's quieter than the golf course, but maybe not quite as scenic.
We only have buses today, not lawnmowers behind us, so yes.
We've traded lawnmowers for buses, but we have another fantastic guest here joining us. We have Jena Good, otherwise known as the Grocery Gal, joining us here on the podcast. You can find her blog at thegrocerygal.blog. She's also the VP of Retail Operations for Walter's Hometown Grocery and Shelton's Grocery. Jena, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Good morning.
We had an awesome time getting to hang out with Jena last night at the casino night, at dinner, and just got to share stories and kind of got to talk a little bit about your history, your background within grocery. But for the listeners, tell everybody kind of how you got into grocery, the story behind that, because we know that there's in a lot of cases like this, it's a family thing, right?
Yeah, I'm technically a third-generation grocer. I have grown up in a grocery store, been there since I guess I can remember. My grandpa managed a small rural grocery store in Temple, Oklahoma, and if we wanted to see my grandpa, that's where we went. So my dad would load us up, and we would go see grandpa at the store. And then when I was 8 years old, my parents bought their first grocery store together. My father had previously opened ones beforehand, but that was like my first venture into being at the grocery store every single day. I would open with my mom and close at 9 o'clock with my mom and head home. About 15, 16, I decided I would never, ever work at the grocery store. And went to college to do something different, and then I never evered my way right back. And I've been there ever since. So I've been working in the store since 2011. And I love it. I have a son now who routinely comes with me, and I'm sure he will never, ever be a grocer, but we'll see if we can maintain something for him to be a part of.
Yeah, I tell you, I used to take my daughters to the grocery store, and they would hang shelf tags on the bottom shelves and clean the bottom tag molding,
Oh, yeah.
Probably not child labor in line, but nonetheless, it was bonding. It truly was one of those things. The grocery business, you make the most when you can with your family, and sometimes it's bringing them to work, but it also instills that work ethic into them.
Yeah. What was vital. Your daughter's favorite part?
She liked, I had three daughters. One liked telling the others that they needed to hurry up. She's a school teacher now, and then. But the others, they liked earning money, because I would pay them a small wage for the day.
Oh, they were lucky.
Yeah, so then they would go over to the magazine rack or get them a snack or what have you. But I think they just enjoyed spending time.
Yeah, my favorite was always the meat market. That's always where I hid. Or my grandfather. He retired in 95 from working on his own, but when we bought the store in 99, he came and did produce for us. And so I can't tell you how many boxes of onions I sat and peeled with my grandpa. Or, he started in the grocery business, 50s, 60s, where he was really hot and heavy with it. But I never could understand why he would purposefully misspell words. He would always spell lemons with an I. And I was like, Grandpa, it's an E. And he would go, no, it catches people's eye. And so hanging out with my grandpa, I learned he would purposely misspell cantaloupes. The same thing if we had fresh cantaloupes in. And so I learned lots of little nifty things that I still do. To this day, just hanging out with him. And now my son's favorite spot is the meat market. For some reason, the butchers are always the cool guys to hang out with.
They got knives.
Yeah, something like that. They let him cut fajita meat, which is child labor. But he does not get paid. Neither did I, at least until I could negotiate some gas money in high school. But other than that, it was just contributing. So
you brought up that generational aspect, right? You're a third generation grocer. And one of the things that we were talking about before we hit record was just that you come to a show like this, and it is a lot of people that are of an older demographic, right?
Yes.
Not as many people, maybe our age. And that's something that you've noticed. I'm curious to know, just your thoughts on the current state of where we are with the industry, right? Especially when it comes to it seems like a lot of people never evered and then didn't come back the way that you did.
Yeah, they don't. For me, I'm stuck in and I say stuck, I choose to be in rural Oklahoma. It's not as flashy or as fancy, and I don't have as much opportunity to go do things or eat food that I might, but I'm very passionate about the industry. Not everybody who grows up in the stores are or is, and when you look at like what you give up to come back to those places whenever you have opportunities to go to a larger place or have more opportunities, it really is a trade-off. For me, we were kind of talking, it's probably not going to be very popular with some of the people, but it is an aging out industry. Mm-hmm. Most of our wholesalers, our brokers, our salespeople are older men, and I would say we have plenty of people that are, in their 60s and older. One of the people that works for us for our wholesaler is in his 80s, and while I love and adore Bob, I absolutely worry and wonder what happens to our industry when these guys finally retire. I feel like most of them really enjoy the industry and what they do, so they hang around, but there's not as many younger. You see younger people in like sales positions for like, say, like Budweiser or corporations like that, Coke, Pepsi, but you don't necessarily see it as much in the actual grocery industry, as far as like owners or, we were talking, I am one of a very small group of under 40 girls that came back to the industry and that work and run in our stores. And I think there's one, like Nikki Carver, I think is in her early 40s, and she's another, but I think that we're definitely under 10 in the state of Oklahoma as far as being in an ownership position.
So when you think about that, and you and I kind of talked a little bit last night about how this isn't necessarily a phenomenon that's just limited to grocery, but what we're seeing is a lot of industries that have thrived for a long time on a vibrant workforce. That workforce is now retiring out, right?
Yes.
And we're seeing that in a lot of specifically like skilled trade type places or industries that aren't necessarily serviced by the 4-year degree, right? And so
and service industry isn't really flashy, so we don't necessarily like gain a workforce back from that. And we talked about the service industry. I mean, I will be 33 next month, and it wasn't popular when I was graduating high school to go into trades. I think that we're seeing a little bit of a shift in that, but I still think that it's a little underserved. Like we talked specifically about like a butchering position. They don't necessarily teach that in trade schools all around. That is a skilled position, and it's one that I wish I could see like developed and whatnot, but I can only do so many jobs and so many things at once, wear so many hats. But it's an interesting thing to think about. Like I said, it's a service industry. Everybody has to eat. So I would love to see more like skilled trades come out supporting that.
As you talk about that, we had a bluefin tuna that we had a cutting at one of the stores that I worked for, and people gathered around to witness this. Once it would be like, ugh, they're cutting that fish up, but now it's like, how do they do it? I mean, it's truly a lost art. And to bring, primal cuts in and produce different, various cuts from them, and then to convert from pork to beef to chicken.
Yes.
I mean, it's truly a lost art.
Yeah, well, we were just talking like, especially like our younger customer base, like they don't cook in the same way that like your parents or your grandparents cook. So I can't tell you like, I probably have like maybe 1 or 2 customers in my age group that like know how to cut up a chicken without like a full fryer without having to YouTube it. But again, their shopping habits are so much different. Right. You see much more like, what can I buy in the frozen section and put in the air fryer, which is fine. I'm all for feeding your family on however you want to. But it really is, like I said, like cutting up a whole fryer, or how do you cook a bone-in ribeye, whichever, it's super popular right now to call them a tomahawk steak. Well, it's just a thick ribeye with the bone on it. But it's interesting that because you don't really have people that ask, well, how do I cook that anymore? Which was kind of something when I started like blogging. I share a ton of recipes and things that are easy because it was a good way to encourage people to buy and try new items if they felt comfortable or confident cooking it. And so it was just another way to kind of branch out.
Right.
We can spend a lot of time on the employment angle, and I would love to stay there for a long time. But one of the other things that you are highly involved in is the legislative side, right?
Yes.
And I would love to talk a little bit more about that and just hear, what sparked your passion for that, and then, B, what sorts of things are going on in that world that maybe people should be aware of?
Oh, I come
and if
from,
you could distill all of that down into like 2 minutes. No.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's where to start. Well, I mean, Mike was up at our legislative day at the Oklahoma State Capitol, so he kind of heard, I think, what my pet project is. I am very passionate about legislation that supports small business but also supports the grocery industry in Oklahoma, specifically the independent industry. Our stores they sit close to the border, and so we have the problem of people who will drive 20 minutes to shop over the border of Oklahoma and Texas and get tax-free grocery. We lose out on a huge customer base to that. You can watch every Saturday morning like the mass exodus out of our small town because they go buy their groceries and then they do their entertainment, like in Wichita Falls, Texas, where they will go out to eat or they will do all their shopping. And so in Oklahoma, municipalities or towns can only operate off of sales tax revenue. It's not the same in Texas where you can operate off of property tax or ad valorem taxes. So Oklahoma remains one of the very few states that has full sales tax on grocery. I think that's a travesty.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that that's awful in so many ways. Food's a necessity. I don't feel like it should be taxed. There's a large debate, and we could talk about what products need to be on that and what don't need to be taxed. But Oklahoma is now the only state. None of our bordering states have a full grocery sales tax. Arkansas has a small one. Kansas has just reformed theirs. Texas has no sales tax on groceries. And Colorado has a different frame. It is really hard in the state of Oklahoma to convince legislators to change either the tax, like to have massive tax reform to change how our municipalities can run, because I would love to see it changed where they don't have to rely just solely on sales tax, because like we've mentioned, in one of our counties, we're the only grocery store. Grocery stores offer a lot of sales tax revenue in the state. They don't want to lose it. And I understand that from the way of our towns need to have services and good roads and things like that. But I also think it's a really big problem, especially for those of us that sit on the border and we lose out on a whole bunch of that revenue. And if we lose out on that revenue, you risk losing those stores and creating a food desert problem, which we already have in the state of Oklahoma, as does Kansas, as does anywhere with rural community. So that's kind of where my passion lies currently. It's going to be a really hard uphill battle because of that. None of the city councils or like the State Chamber of Commerce. It's a very unpopular thought because that's where municipalities get all of their operating funds.
I am realistic about the fact that things change, society changes to a certain extent, but I do believe that, especially with the pandemic and some of the other things that we've seen kind of come along over the last few years, that we've lost a lot of maybe things that carry and communicate culture. And I do feel like locally owned businesses, specifically in like small towns and in rural America, really do such a great job of carrying tradition and carrying through a lot of like culture and add a lot of personality to a place.
Absolutely.
And that there is value there even just beyond like what the business provides, right?
Oh, absolutely. We were talking when I was little, all of my best friends were over 65 years old because I was in the grocery stores. I would be lying to say that it didn't contribute to why I decided to come back to the store. Our second store we built and opened when I was in college, and man, I just remembered why I loved it so much. We have the same customers that come in every single day. I make pecan pie for Bob every Thanksgiving because he doesn't have a family member who does.
Right.
He has diabetes, but we ignore it for Thanksgiving. It's things like that. And so that connection for me is a huge reason why I do what I do and why I love what I do every single day. I would miss it tremendously if I wasn't in the industry or in the stores, but I work out in them every day. I don't just sit in the office and manage, and so it is special. But I look at my son now, who is 10 years old, and all of his best friends are also over 65. And he talks sports with our customers every day. And, you know, I see that through him, and it's very nostalgic for me. But for, like, the risk of sounding cliche and cheesy, like, I hope that continues. And, like, I love it so much. It's really important to me. And like I said, that human connection and the cultural connection, to me, it's what sells the job for me. That's why I came back.
When we would go anywhere, my daughters would be like, "You're talking to everybody, Dad." I was like, "Well, I know everyone around here,
Yes.
you know." And to be able to serve your guests, know their names, know their family, know that if they have a genuine need, they can come to you and ask, and you're not going to judge. And if you can help, you will.
Or not even ask. I can't tell you how many electric bills I pay in the summer when I know a customer is having a hard time.
Right.
Because I see them every day. And you see people's struggles every single day. Or you get to celebrate with them and all of my employees that have just graduated. Or when they go to prom, I show up at Promenade. And, you know, you get to really be an essential part of the community, even if you don't live there.
Right.
And so I get that. My son used to complain that I talk to everybody too, and it's a very big thing in my friends group over, "Oh my gosh, you know so many people." Well, I've worked so many places, and whenever you see people all the time and people come and shop, you get to know a lot of people. So
yeah, my daughter's a teacher, and she's got the same issue of like, how do you like it now? You know, so but it, you know, the grocery industry is truly a people business. We just happen to sell food, and I think when people genuinely make that connection, a light goes on, and it becomes a different world.
it does. It's very familial. You know, Ray Pruitt, our association president, he kind of spoke to that last night about, you know, the connection that food brings us. But, you know, for me, it's just like the way that we open the door to those connections and those friendships. And like I said, I truly feel very familial about my customer base. And not even the ones that come in every day.
Right.
I mean, I can carry out groceries to almost anybody in town's car because I see them enough, I know their car. And I cheer for their kids on Friday nights playing football or basketball. And, you know, you just get to the point where it is more than just selling food.
You know, I'll never forget, I was a young assistant manager and went to an elderly couple's home for lunch because they invited me all the time, and I always had a reason, you know, being at the store. And then one day I had no excuse, if you will, and I felt guilty until I arrived.
Yeah.
And then I realized the impact it made on them as well as myself. And that was, again, you know, that light went off. This is a lot more than just selling groceries.
Oh, absolutely. We talked last night kind of like with the pandemic, and I think it's like the greatest example. It was the worst time in my career, but also like the most beautiful and inspiring. We were working like 17 and 19-hour days. I was sleeping at the store some nights. Felt like I just left, went home, took a shower, and came back. And I was always blown away. We were always fed because customers would bring us breakfast or bring us lunch or dinner. And so, like I said, the worst time, but also the best time, because you really see that it's a reciprocal connection. You know, like everybody appreciates each other. So just as much as we appreciate them, they appreciated us.
You know, the pandemic really established the fact that the grocery industry is as essential in my eyes as that of the law enforcement and public works at all, because you know, we supply food to people, which is a core necessity.
Yeah.
And you know, if the power goes out and we're on backup generators and we're the only, you know, heat source, you open your doors, you bring them in, and you warm your community. I mean, it's so much more than just.
Yeah, I think when it hit for me during the pandemic was when I had to print off the papers for all of our employees that they were considered essential. So if they shut down the towns or roads or things that we could travel in, I thought, whoa.
Had that on my dashboard.
Whoa,
exactly.
Guys, this might be real. But I also, like, legislatively, I think that the pandemic really shifted, like, state legislators, national legislators on the importance of the grocery community, and I think we were kind of forgotten there for a little bit.
Right.
Kind of always put on the back burner. NGA has been doing like an excellent job lately of really supporting like the independents,
right.
you know, against the whole the boogeyman of the big box
Right.
grocery store and what we have to do. And I think the pandemic really opened the door for that to like come to light again, because I feel like we were kind of forgotten for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So it reminded people that, oh, if you can't get food or you don't have groceries, we may have a problem.
Right.
So
That's a really, really good point.
yeah.
You know, I think just important to remember, especially as now we are a couple years on from like the peak of that, right?
Yeah.
I was sitting here like just remembering like scrolling Twitter one day and just seeing like, hey, if grocery store workers are essential workers, then probably should keep that in mind all the time, not just during a pandemic.
Yes.
I was like, that's a really good point, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And we forget that because like buying food is such like an inane
Right.
thing for us. You have to eat, so you just supply yourself with food, but you really do forget how essential that is.
Yeah. Schools are closed. There's ice on the roads, and you're going to open up a grocery store.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
this has been the first
Yes.
time I've had a four-wheel drive vehicle, and I was like, where has this been all my life? Because if it's bad weather, rain, sleet, snow, I'm going to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
because my mom is not letting me skip out. Like, no. If she's there, last time we had really big snowstorm, she's like, hey, I'll pick you up on my way. And I was like, I think I'll make it myself. I'll sleep in an hour or two after you. But, you know, so I'm always there.
Right.
It never fails if it's a bad weather time that I'll have a friend be like, do you guys want to come play in the snow? And I'll be like, girl, I'm at work. Like, no days off.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
No days off. The Grocery Gal is where you can find her, thegrocerygal.blog, and then you're on social media and that sort of thing too, right?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. I haven't been like hitting the Grocery Gal as hard as I once was, because now the pandemic is over. I'm not at home as much and getting to do that, but you can find me on there. I occasionally post things, new products, things I find funny during my work day, or, you know, it's just a little pet side project, because who didn't need a like 10th job, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, I'm looking through some recipes. Like, it's pretty great. And even a recipe for dogs, which is
Yep.
great.
Yep, we have a rescue pup, and she needed a birthday cake. So I was like, hey, let's figure it out, right? Peanut butter, bananas, all the good things. And she just got one last week, so.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Might have to spoil my dog when I get back to Dallas. but,
Perfect.
Jenna, thank you so much for joining us here
You're
on the
welcome.
podcast. This has
It's
an
been
absolute
great
blast.
talking
Yes.
with you guys. I've really enjoyed it this week.
Yeah, we've enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely.
Mike, another awesome episode. Thanks again for being here and for doing this.
My pleasure. I like I said, grocery is life. We'll
It
just end
is.
at that.
Exactly. Now we'll be friends forever, because that's how it goes, right?
That's it.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Well, make sure to go follow Jenna on social media. That's Jena. Not two N's, just one N.
Yep, my mom purposely misspelled it because her mom purposely misspelled hers. So, you know, keeping it real.
Just keeping that cycle going. Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode. But for this one, for Mike Cook and Jenna Good, I'm Tyler Kern. We'll talk to you next time.